Hello, hello, hey, sweet people. Welcome to another episode of Inglês no Rádio. Today I am not here with Alexia, actually. Alexia is still recovering from her second dose of the vaccination. And I'm here with Jackie from Ask Jackie, which is a huge honor and quite the surprise. So, Jackie, welcome. Thank you for being
Oh,
on the show.
thank you. I'm honored to be here. This is really fun. So thank you guys for inviting me.
It is our pleasure. So, Jackie, I imagine most people that listen to our podcast probably are already aware of your work and what you do. Just in the English learning Brazilian world, I think you're quite famous. But for maybe those few people that don't, can you give us a quick overview of who you are, what you do?
Of course. Yeah. It's so funny because the internet is one of those things that we do everything kind of on our own and we don't really realize how many people do watch our videos or listen to our podcasts and things like that. But I'm sure there are lots of people who do not know who I am. So I'm happy to do an introduction. I moved to Brazil in 2009 on kind of a whim, looking for adventure, existential crisis type of thing. I ended up staying for 10 years, having two children, getting married, opening a school, starting an online business, and most importantly, just really falling in love with the language and the culture and in teaching English to the Brazilians and helping them achieve their personal dreams, professional goals, because English is something that truly transforms lives. Like people can have all these degrees and many, many years of experience, but without English, they have so many doors closed to them. So if we can help them learn the language, and learning a language is really difficult. It's not easy to learn a foreign language, but if we can somehow make it a little bit easier by simplifying those difficult things and making the process a little bit more enjoyable, it's a big gift that we can give people, and it's really fulfilling for us as teachers as well. So yeah, now I work completely online. I have an online course, a YouTube channel, Instagram account, Facebook, Telegram. It's like whatever social media appears, we feel like we have to be
You're
there.
everywhere.
Telegram. I'm not on TikTok. I
Don't
am
get me
not on
started.
TikTok.
Alexia is trying to convince me.
We have to have some limits, but yeah, it's crazy how the internet can. We now have students and people who learn from us all over the world, and I learn from people that live all over the world that I've never met personally. I work with people that I've never met in person. So it's pretty amazing what the internet has done for us.
It's insane. Our only full-time employee, Felipe, who's been on the show, we talk about him a lot. I talk to him almost every day, would consider him one of my really close friends. We've still never met in person.
Yeah.
And it's just insane.
Yeah, our editor, who has edited all of our course videos, like 95% of the videos on my channel and everything, we've never met in person either. It's just all over WhatsApp and Skype and other things like that. It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing. It has its pros and cons, and I'm sure we can get into that. Can I ask you one quick question about your background?
Of course, yeah.
So you went to Brazil in 2009, existential crisis. I know the feeling, did the same thing just 5 years later. And were you already teaching at that point?
Yes. So I have my undergrad degree, my bachelor's degree. This is really important vocabulary for everybody listening, in Spanish, actually. and secondary education, which basically means secondary education means I was certified to teach middle school and high school. So that's from 6th grade through 12th grade. Primary education would be elementary school. And I always loved languages, like the Spanish language. I did a semester abroad in Spain when I was in college, and I really loved learning it. I loved the culture. I don't know, it was kind of like an escape in some ways. You kind of go to this fantasy land, and it was for me, I found it very therapeutic, which I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh my God, learning a language is the opposite. I need therapy in order to get through these classes. But for me, I found it very therapeutic in a lot of ways. It was like an escape from reality to this like amazing foreign land where everything is completely different from where you live. And I taught at an all-girls Catholic school for a year. I taught in Chicago public schools. I then went on to get my master's degree in school counseling, and I worked as a school counselor at Lincoln Park High School in Chicago. And that was kind of when the existential crisis hit. I remember looking around, and I was the youngest person in my department. And it was kind of like I spent my whole life following the plan, working to get to that job. And then I was there, and I just saw a lot of people around me counting down the years to retirement. And I found myself counting down the days for the weekend, counting down the months for vacation, counting down the years to retirement, and I was in my 20s at that time. And I'm like, I'm wishing my life away in order to start living. And I had a great life. I have great friends and family, and it was a really good job. But I just felt like it wasn't where I wanted to be. And I remember one night specifically, I was laying in my bed, and I lived on the 53rd floor of a Chicago high rise. A lot of people, Chicago has those like really, really tall buildings. And my unit was on the 53rd floor, and I was just laying there thinking, when I'm 80 plus years old, if I make it that long, hopefully, if I, am 80 something years old, what will I regret more? Staying in this position and doing what is really comfortable and safe, secure, all those things that we kind of want. But then when we get it, we're like, oh, I feel trapped. I can't get out now. Or, right. Taking a risk and doing something kind of crazy. But at the time I was single. I didn't have any responsibilities other than myself. If it was a tremendous mistake and a terrible idea, no one else would be hurt by it except for me. And it was like so obvious to me that I needed to leave that job. And I wanted to go to South America. I wanted to spend time, and I honestly thought I would go to a Spanish-speaking country because that was the language that I could communicate in. But no, I had to make it difficult. But a friend of mine, she had been to Brazil before, and she's like, oh, let's go to Brazil. So we went to Brazil just to visit. During Carnival, we went to Rio, we went to Sao Paulo, went to Marizias, and I just completely fell in love with it. And I started taking some Portuguese classes, and I loved my teacher, the classes, the group of people that were there, because it's just like such a random group of people. Like Chicago does not have a big Brazilian community at all. Like I live in Orlando now, everybody's Brazilian. But Chicago, I had never met a single person from Brazil my entire life living there until I started taking Portuguese classes. And it's just these really cool people that I had absolutely nothing in common with, except for we all loved Brazil and we wanted to learn the language. And even when I went to Brazil, I didn't intend on staying as long as I did. I thought I would go for maybe 6 months or a year, get it out of my system, whatever it was that was in my system. And then I would come back, and I did come back about 7 months later, and I discovered I was pregnant, which was like a whole other crazy story. But it was all worked out. I really think in a lot of ways it was what I needed. It was, I felt almost relieved in some crazy way because I had to focus like what's best for the baby right now. And it wasn't all these options like, oh, maybe I'll go here, maybe I'll do this, maybe I'll do that, like floating around, which makes you completely dissatisfied with whatever you are doing because there's all these amazing other options that are hanging around. It was focused on, okay, we're going to have a baby. We're going to do the best we can with the situation. And we did. And thank God it all worked out. It was a heck of a challenge. But I grew so much. And I know if I hadn't gone through that, I would not be like who I am today. So I'm really grateful for it. And I'm also grateful that, my husband and I were still together. We have another child too. And there are lots and lots of ups and downs, just like any endeavor in life, but it all worked out. So yeah, that was a lot more than what you asked before.
No, wow, that's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I don't remember my original question.
I think you were asking me about my teaching degree.
If you ask Jackie a question, you're going to get an answer.
You're going to get a lot more than you asked for.
No, that's a beautiful story. You said a few things that I'm very curious about. On one hand, I can really resonate with your story that being in a job in the US and it's like, okay, am I just wait around until I die here? What happens? So when I have most of our students are learning English for professional opportunities and career growth. And they really want to take the jump of leaving Brazil and getting a job in Germany or something like that. And I find a lot of students are like, I could not be as brave or as courageous as you, Foster. You left your country and you started a podcast. And I want to say, it was not brave. It was desperation at the time. I don't know if that resonates with you at all.
Absolutely. I think in my situation, when I first came to Brazil, it wasn't complete desperation, but I still knew I could always go back. So it was kind of like, well, why not? Try it out. But, when we had a baby and when we were really struggling financially and when we decided, let's try to make some more money by opening a school and opening groups. I was teaching privately, which was great. But then you begin to think we just were not able to save money, at all. It was really, really tight. So then you are forced to think of ways in which you can hopefully make a little bit more by multiplying your efforts by, teaching in groups or hiring other people or moving to an online space where you can reach more people. And that was a big challenge because I had never really thought like that before. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I was a teacher, and I loved being a teacher. And I always wanted to be a mom. So that was perfect. And I love being a mom more than anything. But I never was super ambitious and driven to have my company. That just is not it today. That still is not my personality. But when you have nothing to lose, we literally were in a desperate situation. If it all went wrong, okay, we weren't going to lose anything because we didn't have anything. And once you get to that position, it's a lot easier to take risks. Now that we actually have something to lose, it is harder. We have children, we have assets, we have a reputation, a company. It's almost more difficult when you have something to lose versus when you're well, I'm at the bottom of the barrel right now. The only way is up, hopefully.
Yeah, or in your case, south.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think when people say they don't have the courage, maybe they just aren't in that desperate of a situation, or maybe they just have too much to risk. And I think that's okay too, because it is very, very risky. It's incredibly risky. And I talk to people all the time that are trying to get into this online space. Just the other day, I was talking to a friend, and
I would probably not recommend it most of the time.
It's something that you have to want so badly that you're willing to do it for many years and not make anything. Actually, you're probably going to spend those first couple of years. So I think it's always good to start off as like a side job. Keep your regular job and start doing something on the side. And usually it turns out to be something really big when it's something that you're really passionate about. But I have friends who are trying to teach English online or do things, and they're saying, I make more working at Burger King, than I do. I make more in Burger King in 1 month than I do trying to teach online in a full year. And that's real, because
That's
hard.
crazy.
Yeah, it's hard.